Well, hello again, and another very warm welcome back to all of my loyal YouTube subscribers who have helped me achieve that magical total of 10,000 subscribers. So thanks to each and every one of you for your support, and I hope you'll continue to find material here on my Classic Dirt Bike TV channel that informs and entertains you. Now, in my next featured video, we're going to continue with the theme of looking at more of those old British classic machines, and this time we're going to take a quick look at Aaron Graves' Faber 500 BSA. Now, this particular example of a pre-68 vintage race bike is very typical of the kind of vintage BSAs that race in the pre-65 and pre-1968 scrambles events here in the UK, and this featured bike of Aaron's is certainly something a bit special indeed. Now, Aaron races this bike in the AMCA British Classic Motocross Championships, and when these video clips and pictures were taken in 2018, Aaron was riding very high and leading the pre-1968 class of the competition by a decent margin of points. Now, beginning with the frame, this is a Faber chrome plated chassis built by the well-respected Howard Fox and Miles Webb, who started Faber frames many years ago and are still building these very high quality BSA Victor frames to this day. But of course, the Faber Frames company not only build these single chassis, and if you have the necessary funds, they'll also build you a complete rolling chassis, so then all you have to do is just slot in the BSA motor of your choice. But if you're in the market and currently looking for an original BSA frame, then certainly these guys are worth speaking to at faberframes.com. But you can almost see that these beautiful Faber frames are almost works of art in their very own right, and they certainly look the dogs when they're finished in this beautiful chrome plating. Now, these fine billet alloy triple clamps also come with this Faber frame, and these again are very high quality and are stronger and lighter than the BSA originals. Now, also these Faber frames have the engine oil housed in the bike's chassis, and you can fill the frame with the required lubricant through this filler cap. Now, the pipe that you see here is the return feed after the oil's been pumped through the motor. And now in this shot you can see the superb workmanship and the quality of the welding on these British made steel frames, and it just goes to show that Britain still has the skills when it comes to making vintage motorcycles. Now, the engine on Aaron's bike is said to be a 1964 500cc unit with a nickel plated barrel and oversized valves fitted to the head to improve the gas flow. Now, this engine on Aaron's race bike was put together by his good friend and all-round BSA motor expert Adrian Mays. Now, this clutch side of the engine was partly machine flat because the crankshaft had been shortened as the ignition pickup had now been removed from the cam and was no longer required due to the motor now having a self-contained interspan ignition system. But this is quite a common modification on these old BSA motors if they are being used for off-road racing. Now, the engine is also fitted with an NEB clutch and gearbox, and actually NEB are another good supplier if you're looking for upgraded parts for these old British BSA power plants. Now, many of the other parts that were fitted to Aaron's engine were supplied by Mark Cook at CCM Britain, who also make replacement parts for those world famous Alan Clues CCM machines. Now, it's good to see that Aaron has stuck with the British made AMCA concentric carburettor and aluminium bell mouth that goes into the air filter, as many of these riders tend to swap these for other makes like Mikuni's. But nevertheless, this is a very quick old British four-stroker, especially when Aaron's in the rider's seat. But once you get one of these old BSA motors set up just right, they can be very quick and very competitive when it comes to vintage racing. Now, these front forks on Aaron's bike were again supplied by another of Aaron's racing friends called Nick Archer. Now, as to what make they actually are, I'm not entirely sure, but they certainly look the goods. Now, the front and rear brake hubs are of course CZ items, as these CZ hubs are a hugely popular choice not only for these BSA bikes, but are also used in a multitude of other manufacturers' machines. But these hubs are chosen mainly because they're slightly better in terms of their operation than the BSA originals, and they're also lighter and are more freely available to buy on the internet and at other off-road sources. Although they certainly make a great addition to these black SM Pro Platinum rims, which were actually built by Essex Wheels. But for me, I'm still not sure what the attraction is for these black wheels on old classic bikes, and maybe it's because I'm just old school and I like my polished chrome and shiny bits of aluminium. But this superbly handcrafted alloy BSA Victor tank is yet another part made by the guys at Holtzworks, who are specialists at making these classic gas tanks and every other alloy part that you require for your old vintage racer. Now, these are very high quality parts and made with the finest materials, and of course are finished off with this Monza style fuel cap on top. Now, when it comes to the bike seat, this looks like it's one of the most comfortable seats that I've seen recently on an older vintage race bike. Now, I know it's a scrambles bike at the end of the day and it's not supposed to be comfortable, but when you get older in your years as a vintage rider, comfort tends to take priority over function. But when it comes to the bike's rear suspension, these shocks on Aaron's bike are a pair of Dutch-made Riger Classic units. Now, these again are very good quality suspension systems and certainly 100 times better than any shocks that would have been fitted to this BSA back in the day. Now, as I mentioned previously, this bike has a self-contained interspan ignition system whereby the unit has a rechargeable battery and HT supply all in one. And as you can see, Aaron is already charging up his interspan from a separate 12 volt supply prior to racing. Now, most of the bike's hand controls are all the kind of parts that you can buy over the counter at any off-road motorcycle suppliers, and these parts fitted to Aaron's machine will almost undoubtedly be, again, very top quality. But for me, these superbly engineered billet alloy triple clamps just complement the quality of that fantastic Faber chassis. And just to the right of your picture there, you can see the engine oil filler cap at the top of the frame. But all in all, this is still a cracking looking vintage racer. Okay, maybe the black wheels and the mudguards are not to my personal liking, but then again, who am I to comment? It's not really my bike, but I know for a fact that this is one serious vintage race bike, and in the past has taken Aaron to many a British Championship win. But if you're a regular visitor to my channel, you may have already seen Aaron in action on this bike at the Cumberland Grand National, where these particular shots were actually taken, and it's great to see these younger riders taking an interest in racing these older vintage machines, when of course they could be racing more modern machinery with faster motors and better suspensions. So for me, I applaud these riders like Aaron who keep up our interests in these old classics and still race them, giving us a little glimpse of what it was actually like at local scramble events way back in the day. But this old Faber BSA of Aaron's is without doubt another vintage gem, and certainly worthy of its few minutes of fame here on Classic Dirt Bike TV. So once again, thank you all very much for taking the time to view these old classic dirt bikes, and next up we'll be taking a look at Glenn Davies' beautiful twin port CZs. So until next time, stay safe and ride safe until we speak once more here on Classic Dirt Bike TV. This video was brought to you in association with Wealthsport, the world's #1 supplier for all your off-road, sports and leisure wear. Just visit their online website at wealthsport.com for more details.